I am Layla, 24 years old. Gaming has been my escape since childhood, connecting me to worlds beyond our turbulent home. For 2 years, I saved every penny from my graphic design work to build my dream PC. It was my sanctuary. Until I returned home to find an empty space where my computer used to be. The betrayal cut deeper knowing who had taken it. I never imagined my own family would shatter my trust so completely. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and hit subscribe if you value standing up for yourself in difficult situations. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis was never easy in our household. The constant tension between my parents created an atmosphere where I often felt like I was walking on eggshells. My father, Frank, worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership. He was the type of man who believed his word was law within our home, and questioning his authority was something close to treason. My mother, Diana, a part-time receptionist at a dental office, typically chose the path of least resistance, agreeing with whatever decision my father made to avoid conflict. I was first introduced to gaming when I was 7 years old by my uncle James. He came to visit for Christmas and brought his gaming console with him. I remember being completely mesmerized watching him play adventure games, the colorful worlds, and engaging stories, capturing my imagination in ways nothing else had before. When he noticed my interest, he handed me the controller and patiently taught me how to navigate the game. Those few days over Christmas break became the foundation for what would eventually grow into my greatest passion. As I grew older, gaming became more than just a hobby. During my parents' frequent arguments, I would escape to these digital worlds, where I had control, where problems had solutions, and where I felt capable and powerful. The contrast between the chaos of our home and the structured challenges of games provided me with much-needed stability. It became my coping mechanism, my safe haven. My younger sister Megan and I shared a room until I was 14. Even with our 8-year age gap, we maintained a close relationship. I often included her in my gaming sessions, teaching her just as Uncle James had taught me. She never developed the same passion for it, but those shared moments playing together strengthened our bond. Megan was always more interested in fashion and social media, completely different from my more introverted nature, but we respected our differences. College was a struggle financially. My parents made it clear that while they supported my decision to study graphic design, they expected me to finance my education myself. They had saved some money for college, but most of it was earmarked for Megan, who they believed had more practical aspirations in business. I never resented this decision, instead taking pride in my independence. I worked part-time at a local coffee shop while attending classes full-time and taking on small freelance design projects whenever possible. For 2 years after graduation, I lived at home to save money while building my freelance business. Every extra dollar went into my savings account, dedicated to what I called my dream machine. I researched components, obsessively following tech forums and watching countless YouTube videos about PC builds. I created spreadsheets tracking prices, performance benchmarks, and compatibility between different parts. This wasn't just a casual purchase, it was an investment in my future. After 24 months of disciplined saving, I finally had the $3,200 needed for my custom PC. I remember the day I ordered all the components, my hands actually shaking with excitement as I clicked the purchase button. When the boxes started arriving, I converted our garage into a temporary workshop, carefully assembling each piece. I installed a high-end graphics card, 32 gigabytes of RAM, a top-tier processor, and a solid-state drive with ample storage for my design projects. The case I selected had programmable RGB lighting that I set to shift between calming blue and purple hues. This computer wasn't just a gaming machine, it was my professional workstation. I used it to create designs for clients, edit videos, and build my portfolio. The powerful processor and graphics card allowed me to work with complex design software without frustrating lag or crashes. It was the tool that allowed me to transition from occasional freelance gigs to more consistent, higher-paying work. Within 6 months of having my new system, I had secured enough regular clients to establish a stable income. But beyond its practical value, this PC held tremendous emotional significance for me. It represented years of hard work, financial discipline, and my commitment to both my passion and my career. Every time I sat down at my desk and pressed the power button, watching the lights come to life, I felt a sense of accomplishment and pride. It was tangible proof that I could set a difficult goal and achieve it through persistence, in a house where I often felt my achievements were overlooked in favor of my sister. This was something that was entirely mine, something I had earned through my own efforts. I set up my workspace in the corner of my bedroom, arranging my desk to showcase the computer, while maximizing efficiency. I added a dual monitor setup, a comfortable gaming chair, and organized my drawing tablet and other accessories within easy reach. This space became my sanctuary, the place where I could fully express myself creatively and escape into virtual worlds that brought me joy. It was the one area in our house that felt completely mine, where I had control and could be entirely myself. The weekend trip to visit my college friend Amanda in Chicago was supposed to be a brief, relaxing getaway. We had been planning it for months, a chance to catch up and unwind. After 3 days of exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and staying up late, reminiscing about our university days, I returned home Sunday evening feeling refreshed and energized. That feeling would be short-lived. Something felt off the moment I walked through the front door. My mother greeted me with a smile that seemed strained, her eyes not quite meeting mine as she asked about my trip. My father was unusually quiet, engrossed in watching television in the living room, merely grunting in acknowledgement when I said hello. Most telling was Megan, who normally would bombard me with questions about my adventures in Chicago, was nowhere to be seen. I called out to my sister, and after a moment she appeared at the top of the stairs. Her response to my greeting was subdued, lacking her usual enthusiasm. She mumbled something about having homework and quickly retreated to her room before I could say anything more. The interaction left me puzzled, but I dismissed it as teenage mood swings. After unpacking my overnight bag and sorting through the mail that had accumulated during my absence, I headed to my room eager to check emails and perhaps play a quick game to unwind. I opened my bedroom door and immediately froze. The corner of my room where my PC had been looked barren. The monitors were still there, but disconnected, their cables dangling uselessly. The keyboard and mouse remained positioned as if ready for use, but the heart of my setup, my custom-built computer, was gone. For several seconds, I stood motionless, trying to process what I was seeing. My first thought was that someone had broken in and stolen it, but nothing else in the house appeared disturbed. With growing dread, I rushed downstairs to find my parents. They were in the kitchen, now my mother preparing dinner, while my father sat at the table scrolling through his phone. When I demanded to know what happened to my computer, their reactions confirmed my worst fears. They exchanged a quick glance before my father looked up with an expression of mild annoyance, as if my question was an overreaction. Mom approached me with her hands clasped together, that nervous gesture she always made when delivering bad news. Her voice was soft, conciliatory. "We just borrowed it temporarily, sweetheart. We needed to reallocate some resources for some unexpected expenses. We will replace it soon, I promise." The deliberately vague explanation set off alarm bells. Borrowed. A computer isn't something you borrow. You sell it. My father finally spoke up, his tone dismissive. "We needed the money for family expenses. Sometimes we all need to make sacrifices for the family. You are still living under our roof rent-free after all." I felt my chest tighten as the implications of their words sank in. They had sold my computer, something I had saved for years to buy, without even consulting me. The casual way they described this violation of my property and trust was stunning. "Where is Megan?" I asked suddenly, connecting her strange behavior to the situation. My mother glanced toward the ceiling, indicating my sister was still in her room. "She had nothing to do with this," my father added quickly. "This was our decision as your parents." I went back upstairs in a daze, noticing details I had missed in my initial shock. My desk had been rearranged slightly, drawers opened and not properly closed. My collection of gaming accessories, including my specialized mouse pad and headset, were missing as well. They had gone through my things, taking what they wanted while I was away. I knocked on Megan's door, but she called out that she was busy. The muffled music playing in her room increased in volume, clearly signaling she did not want to talk. Standing in the hallway between our rooms, I felt disoriented, like the foundation of my home life had suddenly shifted beneath my feet. That evening at dinner, the tension was palpable. Megan picked at her food, keeping her eyes down. My parents attempted normal conversation, asking about my trip and upcoming work projects, as if nothing unusual had happened. I answered in monosyllables, still trying to process their betrayal. When I asked directly how much they had sold the computer for, and when they planned to replace it, my father changed the subject, and my mother nervously suggested we have dessert. I went to bed that night convinced there must be more to the story. Perhaps they truly had encountered some financial emergency that required immediate action. Maybe they had tried to call me in Chicago, but couldn't reach me. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, that my parents wouldn't simply disregard something so important to me without a compelling reason. Despite my anger and confusion, I still wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. As I lay in bed staring at the empty corner where my computer had been, I tried to calculate how long it would take to save for another one. My freelance work would surely suffer without my main tool, potentially creating a financial setback that would take months to recover from. Still, part of me hoped this was all a misunderstanding that would be cleared up in the morning, that perhaps they had just temporarily moved my computer for some reason and were being strangely evasive about it. I fell into an uneasy sleep, trying to quiet the growing sense that something was very wrong within my family. 2 days after my return, I was still trying to make sense of what had happened. Working on my laptop was frustrating after becoming accustomed to the power and efficiency of my PC. Several clients had already commented on the delay in my usual response time, and I worried about the long-term impact on my business. Late Tuesday evening, I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water when I overheard my parents arguing in their bedroom. Their voices were hushed but intense, carrying through the partially open door. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard my name. "I can't believe you told her we needed it for family expenses," my mother was saying, her voice tight with frustration. "Now she thinks we're having money problems. What happens when she sees the credit card statement Frank it's in both our names? She could check it any time. And what about when Megan starts showing up with all her new things? We should have just told her the truth." My father's response was dismissive. "She never checks the statements. Besides, I am not going to justify our parenting decisions to our daughter. We don't answer to her. If she wanted complete control over her possessions, she should move out and get her own place. She is 24 years old, for God's sake." With my heart pounding, I crept away and returned to my room. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the family credit card account, which I rarely checked despite being an authorized user for emergencies. I scrolled through the recent transactions and felt my stomach drop. There were charges from several high-end clothing stores at the luxury mall across town, totaling over $2,000, all from the exact day I was in Chicago. The next morning, I noticed Megan wearing a new sweater I hadn't seen before. When I complimented it, she mumbled thanks and quickly changed the subject. Later that day, she emerged from the bathroom wearing what appeared to be expensive makeup, the kind of brands I could never afford even now with my improved income. Each new item I noticed was another piece falling into the devastating puzzle. I waited until our parents left for their weekly date night dinner before confronting my sister. I knocked on her door, and this time I wasn't taking no for an answer. When she reluctantly let me in, I noticed shopping bags partially hidden in her closet, the distinct packaging of luxury brands visible even from across the room. "Megan, I need you to tell me what happened with my computer," I said, closing the door behind me. Her face crumpled almost immediately, tears welling up in her eyes. She sat heavily on her bed, shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm so sorry, Layla. It wasn't supposed to be like this." Through her tears, the full story emerged. Our parents had sold my computer to fund a birthday shopping spree for Megan, who would be turning 17 next month. They had taken her to the mall the very day I left for Chicago, allowing her to pick out designer clothes, shoes, makeup, and accessories as an early birthday present. "Dad said they would replace your computer eventually," she explained between sobs. "He said you were too old to be spending so much time gaming anyway, and that it was just a childish hobby. Mom said maybe this would motivate you to focus more on your real work instead of wasting time." Each word felt like a physical blow. My parents hadn't just sold my property, they had completely dismissed my passion, and by extension, a core part of my identity. The revelation that they viewed my gaming as childish and wasteful, despite knowing how much it meant to me and how it had helped me cope during difficult times, was deeply hurtful. But they knew I needed it for work, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. My entire freelance business depends on having proper equipment. Megan wiped her tears with the sleeve of her new cashmere sweater. Dad said your laptop was good enough for design work, that you were just being particular about specifications that didn't really matter. He said it was time you learned about priorities. The betrayal cut deeper with each new detail. Not only had my parents sold something precious to me, but they had done so while fundamentally disrespecting my career, my choices, and my autonomy as an adult. They had waited until I was gone, deliberately selling my property behind my back, rather than having an honest conversation. That evening, I confronted them directly. I laid out what I knew, watching their expressions shift from surprise to defensiveness. My father crossed his arms, a gesture I recognized from childhood, as his preparation for laying down the law. "We are your parents," he stated firmly. "While you live in this house, we make the decisions about what is appropriate. Your sister needed new clothes for the school year, and we decided your computer was an unnecessary luxury. When I pointed out that the computer was my property purchased with money I had earned, his expression hardened. You are living here rent-free. The money you saved for that gaming toy could have been contributed to household expenses. We did you a favor by selling it. Maybe now you will focus on growing up and establishing yourself properly." My mother, as usual, attempted to soften his words, but ultimately supported his position. "Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. Gaming isn't a real career path. Your design work is lovely, but you don't need such an expensive computer for that. We thought giving Megan a nice birthday would bring joy to the whole family." The discussion escalated as I insisted they compensate me for the full value of the PC. My father scoffed at the suggestion, claiming the $3,000 plus I had spent was ridiculous overpayment for something that wasn't worth nearly that much. "We got $1,500 for it, and frankly the buyer was being generous," he said with finality. "If you want another computer so badly, use your savings. Though I would suggest you put that money toward getting your own apartment if our rules are so objectionable to you." The realization that they had sold my meticulously researched, carefully assembled computer for less than half its value was the final straw. Not only had they taken something precious from me, but they had discarded it carelessly without even bothering to understand its true worth, just as they had never bothered to understand what gaming truly meant to me. The family dinner the following night erupted into the worst argument of my life. What had been simmering tension boiled over into a full-blown confrontation when my father made a passing comment about me sulking over an expensive toy. I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "I demand to be compensated for my computer," I stated firmly, putting down my fork. $3,200. That was what I paid, and that is what you owe me." My father laughed dismissively, the sound cutting through me like a knife. "That computer was not worth $3,000. No computer is. You got ripped off, and frankly, we did you a favor selling it before it depreciated even more." "That computer was mine," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I bought it with my own money. Money I earned working while going to school full-time. You had no right to sell it, especially not for less than half its value." His face darkened as he leaned forward. "We have every right. We are your parents. You live in our house. We don't need your permission to make decisions about what happens under our roof." The coldness in his voice shocked me. This wasn't just about the computer anymore. This was about respect, about recognizing me as an independent adult capable of making my own choices. My mother reached across the table, attempting to diffuse the situation with her typical peacemaking. "Layla, sweetie, we understand you are upset. But your sister really needed these clothes for school, and we thought since you have your laptop for work, the gaming computer was, well, expendable." Megan sat silently, tears streaming down her face. She looked genuinely remorseful, caught between loyalty to our parents and recognition of the wrong done to me. "I don't need designer clothes," she whispered, looking down at her plate. I told them I was happy with regular mall stores. My father turned to her sharply. "Don't get involved in this, Megan." The decision was made. "Your sister is being selfish and ungrateful after everything we've done for her." "Everything you've done for me," I repeated, incredulous. like making me pay my own way through college while saving for Megan's, like constantly dismissing my career choices. Or maybe you mean selling my personal property without my knowledge or consent. The argument escalated rapidly from there. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. He pointed his finger at me accusingly. We never approved of your obsession with video games. It's childish and unproductive. You are 24 years old, still living at home, wasting hours playing games instead of building a real career. That computer was encouraging your worst habits. The words stung, revealing the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My parents, especially my father, had never respected my choices or my passions. What really hurts is realizing you never intended to replace it, did you? I asked, looking between them. My mother looked away, confirming my suspicion. My father scoffed. Why would we replace something you shouldn't have bought in the first place? As the argument continued, more painful truths emerged. My parents admitted they had been entering my room regularly without permission, monitoring my activities, and judging how I spent my time. They had discussed selling my computer weeks before actually doing it deliberately, waiting for my Chicago trip as the perfect opportunity. You spend too much time locked in your room, my father said. We were worried about you becoming more isolated. Gaming addiction is a real problem, Layla. We were trying to help you. By stealing from me, I shot back. By completely disregarding my boundaries. That computer wasn't just for gaming. It was my workstation. I built my business around it. Clients are already complaining about delays because I can't process files as quickly on my laptop. You call a few freelance gigs a business? My father laughed derisively. When are you going to get a real job with benefits and stability? This graphic design phase was cute for college, but it's time to grow up. Each word was another wound, another revelation of how little they respected me and my choices. The breaking point came when my father suggested I should be contributing more to household expenses instead of wasting money on games and computer parts. If you want to be treated like an adult with adult property rights, then you can start paying adult bills, he declared. $500 a month for rent plus a share of utilities and groceries. Otherwise, what happens in this house is our decision. I couldn't speak through my tears. I pushed back from the table and ran upstairs, locking myself in the bathroom where I could cry freely. Sitting on the cold tile floor, I felt completely alone. The people who should have supported me, who should have respected my autonomy and celebrated my achievements, had instead betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. Through the door, I could hear the continuing argument. My mother whispered harshly at my father for pushing too hard, while he maintained I needed a wake-up call. Megan was crying repeatedly, saying she never would have gone shopping if she'd known what they had done. Their voices became background noise as I confronted the painful reality that I could no longer live in a home where my boundaries meant nothing, where my passions were dismissed as childish, and where my property could be taken on a whim. As I sat there, tears streaming down my face, I realized this moment represented a crossroads in my life. I could either continue living under my parents' thumb, constantly fighting for basic respect, or I could take control of my own destiny. The computer had been more than just a possession. It had been a symbol of my independence. Now, its absence was pushing me toward an even greater step toward freedom, though the path ahead seemed terrifying and uncertain. I spent the night sleepless, turning over my options. By morning, I had made a decision. This situation wasn't going to improve, and staying would only lead to more pain and resentment. I needed to take action to reclaim control over my life in a way that would clearly communicate my boundaries to my family. The first person I called was my best friend Taylor. We had met in our freshman year graphic design class and remained close even though she had moved to a neighboring city after graduation. When I explained what had happened, her outrage matched my own. "Layla, you cannot stay there," she said firmly. "They completely violated your trust. And the way your dad talked about your career, absolutely not. No one gets to disrespect you like that, especially not your own parents." She suggested I move in with her temporarily while I looked for my own place, an offer that brought me to tears with gratitude. But I knew I needed a more permanent solution, one that wouldn't strain our friendship if finding an apartment took longer than expected. My next call was to Uncle James, the person who had introduced me to gaming all those years ago. He had always been the family member who truly understood me, who saw my passion for gaming as valid and valuable. His reaction was immediate and supportive. "I'm absolutely disgusted with my brother," he said, referring to my father. "That's theft, plain and simple. They had no right to sell something you purchased with your own money." I raised him better than that. Uncle James not only validated my feelings, but offered practical help. He knew someone renting rooms in a shared house that might be perfect for my budget. He also insisted on lending me money for a new computer, a gesture I reluctantly accepted only after he framed it as an investment in my business rather than charity. With potential housing secured, I turned my attention to my finances. I spent hours reviewing my freelance contracts, reaching out to clients to explain my situation, and calculating exactly how much I could afford for rent and living expenses. To my surprise, my business had been growing steadily over the past 6 months. With careful budgeting, I could afford a modest room in a shared apartment, basic living expenses, and still save toward replacing my equipment. I arranged to visit the shared house Uncle James had mentioned, meeting the two other roommates, both young professionals around my age. The room was small but private, with enough space for a desk and bed. The location was convenient, close to a coffee shop, where I could work until I replaced my PC. Most importantly, it represented freedom from the toxic environment my childhood home had become. The next day, I opened a new bank account at a different bank than the one my parents used. I transferred all my savings and set up my client payments to go to this new account. I was taking no chances that my parents might try to interfere with my finances as I prepared my exit. While my parents were at work and Megan at school, I began quietly documenting everything in my room, taking photos of my remaining possessions, and creating a detailed list of what had been taken. I found the original receipts for my computer components and saved them along with screenshots of comparable current market prices, building evidence of the actual value of what had been taken from me. The hardest part was deciding what to take and what to leave behind. My room contained 18 years' worth of memories, from childhood stuffed animals to high school yearbooks. I knew I could only take what would fit in my car, which meant making difficult choices about which pieces of my past were essential to carry forward into my future. I found myself lingering over family photos, feeling a complicated mix of love and hurt. Despite everything, these were still my parents, still people I had loved, and who in their own flawed way probably thought they were doing what was best for me. Megan was still my sister, someone I had watched grow up, and who I couldn't simply cut out of my life. I selected a few meaningful photos to take with me, acknowledging that even as I created necessary distance, these relationships would remain part of who I was. The next week passed in a strange limbo. I pretended everything was normal at home, while secretly preparing for my departure. I signed the lease agreement for the room in the shared house, putting down the security deposit and first month's rent. I purchased essential items I would need for my new place, having them delivered to Taylor's apartment to avoid suspicion. Each step I took toward independence brought a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. I was terrified of being on my own completely, for the first time, of potentially damaging my relationship with my family beyond repair. But I also felt a growing sense of empowerment, a recognition that I was taking control of my life in a fundamental way. The loss of my computer, painful as it was, had become the catalyst for a necessary transition that perhaps had been too long in coming. The night before my planned move, I sat on my bed looking around the room that had been my sanctuary for so many years. Despite the mixture of emotions swirling within me, one feeling rose above the others: determination. I was making the right choice. My parents' actions had shown a fundamental lack of respect for my autonomy, my property, and my life choices. Staying would mean accepting that I deserved nothing better, and that was something I was no longer willing to do. My parents and Megan were invited to my cousin's wedding, providing the perfect opportunity for my departure. I had declined the invitation, citing work deadlines, which now seemed ironically fortuitous. As soon as they left Saturday morning, I sprang into action, bringing in the moving boxes I'd hidden in my trunk and efficiently packing the remaining items I planned to take. Taylor and her boyfriend arrived to help, making the process go much faster than I anticipated. Within 3 hours, my car was loaded with my essential possessions: clothes, personal items, important documents, and the equipment I used for work. Looking at my now half-empty room created a bittersweet feeling. I hadn't expected a visual representation of my partial separation from my family. Before leaving, I wrote a letter explaining my decision. I wanted my family to understand that this wasn't an impulsive reaction, but a response to a pattern of disrespect that had culminated in the sale of my computer. I detailed how their actions had violated my trust and boundaries, how their dismissal of my career and passions had made me feel devalued and unimportant in their eyes. I explained that I needed space to establish myself as an independent adult, one whose choices and property would be respected. I left the letter on my desk, where it would be immediately visible upon their return. The drive to my new home was quiet, my mind too full of swirling emotions to maintain conversation with Taylor. She seemed to understand keeping the music low and giving me space to process. When we arrived at the shared house, my new roommates helped unload the car, their warm welcome providing a small comfort in the midst of such a significant transition. Setting up my new room took the rest of the day. It was sparse compared to my room at home, but it was mine, a space where I made the rules and where my boundaries would be respected. I set up my desk by the window, arranging my laptop and remaining accessories in anticipation of eventually replacing my PC. The final touch was placing the framed photo of Megan and me on the nightstand, a reminder that despite everything, some family bonds were worth preserving. My sister was the first to contact me after they returned home and found me gone. Her tearful phone call came just a few hours after they would have arrived back from the wedding. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her words. "Please come home, Layla," she begged between sobs. "I'm so sorry about the computer. I never wanted any of this to happen. We can fix this. Please just come back." I gently explained that this wasn't just about the computer anymore. It was about respect and boundaries concepts she was just beginning to understand at 16. I assured her that I wasn't abandoning her, that our relationship could continue, even if I no longer lived at home. I promised to meet her for lunch the following weekend, a commitment that seemed to calm her somewhat. My parents' reactions were predictably different from each other. My mother called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that alternated between tears and guilt trips. "You are breaking up this family," she said in one message. "How could you do this to us after everything we've sacrificed for you?" My father, true to form, went immediately to anger and threats. His text messages were curt and cold. "You are making a childish mistake. Don't expect our help when this little independent living experiment fails. You have chosen to abandon your family obligations." I responded to neither of them needing time to establish my new life without their emotional manipulations complicating an already difficult transition. The only family member I remained in regular contact with was Uncle James, who checked in daily to make sure I was adjusting well and had everything I needed. 2 weeks after my move, the family drama escalated to a new level. Uncle James called to tell me that at a family dinner at my grandparents' house, he had confronted my father about selling my computer. The disagreement had apparently devolved into a heated argument with various family members taking sides. According to my uncle, several relatives were firmly in my corner, particularly those who understood the value of the computer, both financially and for my career. This information was both validating and distressing. While I appreciated the support, I hadn't intended to create divisions within the extended family. The situation had grown beyond a private family matter into a larger conflict that affected relationships beyond my immediate household. In the midst of this family turmoil, Megan surprised me by showing up at my apartment one afternoon. She carried a box of my remaining belongings shed gathered from my room, things I had overlooked or deemed non-essential during my hurried move. Among them was my collection of gaming figurines I had accumulated over the years, each one carefully wrapped in tissue paper to prevent damage. We sat in the small kitchen of my shared house, the awkwardness between us gradually dissipating as we talked. Megan confessed she had returned the most expensive items from her shopping spree, though our parents had insisted she keep most of the clothes and makeup. "I realized how wrong it was," she said quietly. "Using your computer money for my birthday presents when you worked so hard for it. I've been babysitting extra shifts to save up money to help replace it." I was touched by her gesture, even though the amount she could save from babysitting would be a drop in the bucket compared to what was needed. More important than the money was her recognition of the wrong that had been done and her desire to make amends in whatever way she could. We had a long, difficult conversation about respect and boundaries concepts that were particularly relevant as she approached adulthood herself. I explained how important it was to establish one's own identity, separate from parents, expectations, to stand up for oneself even when it was difficult or unpopular. Seeing you move out like this, she admitted, it made me realize I need to start thinking about what I want, not just what mom and dad want for me. It's scary but kind of exciting too. Those first weeks of independence were a strange mixture of liberation and loneliness. I enjoyed the freedom of making my own schedule, of not having to explain my comings and goings or justify how I spent my time. At the same time, I missed the comfortable familiarity of home, the easy access to family meals, and even the background presence of my parents and sister going about their daily lives. The true test came when my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment one evening. My roommate Jen knocked on my bedroom door, looking uncomfortable, as she told me my parents were in the living room insisting on speaking with me. The confrontation that followed was tense and uncomfortable. My father demanded I return home, framing it as concern for my well-being, but revealing his true feelings when he added, "This childish rebellion has gone far enough. You've made your point." My mother tried a softer approach, appealing to family unity and suggesting that we could work through our differences, if only I would come home. When I remained firm in my decision to stay, the conversation devolved into accusations and recriminations, with my father eventually storming out, and my mother following after giving me one last pleading look. My roommates were understanding, but shaken by the encounter. After my parents left, Jen and our other roommate, Sam, sat with me in the kitchen, offering support and sharing stories of their own family conflicts. Their solidarity helped ease the pain of the confrontation, reminding me that I wasn't alone in struggling to establish healthy boundaries with family. As difficult as that encounter was, it strengthened my resolve. I had made the right decision in leaving and refusing to remain in an environment where my autonomy wasn't respected. The pain I felt was the necessary cost of growth, of becoming fully independent and establishing myself as an adult deserving of respect. 6 months after moving out, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. That devastating day I discovered my computer missing. The initial shock and hurt had gradually evolved into a more nuanced understanding of my family dynamics and my place within them. My freelance business had not only survived the setback, but thrived. Without the constant tension and undermining at home, I found myself more productive and creative. I had secured several new clients, including a recurring contract with a local marketing agency that provided stable income. 3 months after moving out, I had saved enough to purchase a new PC setup, one even more powerful than what I had lost. The day I assembled my new computer felt like a significant milestone in my journey to independence. Each component I installed represented not just the restoration of a tool I needed for work, but a reclaiming of my passion and identity. When I pressed the power button for the first time and watched the system come to life, the sense of accomplishment was even more profound than with my first build. This computer symbolized my resilience, my ability to recover from setbacks and rebuild what had been taken from me. My relationship with my sister had actually strengthened during our time apart. Without our parents' immediate influence, Megan and I developed a more equal relationship. She visited my apartment regularly, sometimes staying overnight on weekends. I noticed subtle changes in her, a growing independence and willingness to question our parents' decisions that I attributed partly to witnessing my own stand for autonomy. One evening, as we shared takeout Chinese food in my small kitchen, Megan told me about standing up to our father regarding her college choices. He had been pushing her toward business school, but she had developed an interest in environmental science. "I told him I needed to follow my own path just like you did," she said, pride evident in her voice. "He was angry at first, but I stood my ground. I think he actually respected it a little, even if he wouldn't admit it." My contact with my parents had been minimal for the first 3 months after moving out. Gradually, through Megan's mediation, we began to establish a new, more distant but potentially healthier relationship. The first step was agreeing to meet on neutral ground, a restaurant where we could have a public conversation, without the risk of tempers flaring too dramatically. That first dinner was painfully awkward. We made stilted small talk about the weather, about extended family members, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. It wasn't until dessert that my mother finally broke. "We miss you, Layla," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "The house feels empty without you." I acknowledged that I missed aspects of home too, but gently reinforced that I couldn't return to a situation where my boundaries weren't respected. I was willing to work on our relationship, but only if they were willing to see me as an independent adult with the right to make my own choices. My father remained stubbornly proud throughout most of the meal, but as we prepared to leave, he made a small concession. "Your business seems to be doing well," he said gruffly. "That new client you mentioned sounds like a good opportunity." Coming from him, this acknowledgement of my career was significant, a tiny crack in the wall of disapproval he had built around my choices. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Over the next few months, we established a cautious routine of family dinners every other Sunday. Each was slightly less tense than the last, as we slowly learned to relate to each other in new ways. My mother made the most dramatic shift, gradually stopping her attempts to guilt me into moving home, and instead showing interest in my independent life. She visited my apartment, bringing home cooked meals and small housewarming gifts, her way of showing support without words. The most profound moment in our healing process came unexpectedly about 5 months after I had moved out. My mother asked to meet me for coffee, just the two of us. Sitting across from me in the small cafe, she seemed nervous, repeatedly stirring her already mixed latte. "What happened with your computer was wrong," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We had no right to sell something you bought with your own money. I knew it at the time, but I didn't stand up to your father. I was a coward." Her tearful apology opened a door that had been firmly closed between us. She acknowledged the violation of my trust and property, taking responsibility for her part in it, rather than hiding behind my father's decisions. She couldn't restore what had been taken, but her recognition of the wrong done was healing in its own way. My father's journey was slower and less direct. He never offered an explicit apology, but his actions began to show a grudging respect for my independence. He stopped making dismissive comments about my career and occasionally asked genuine questions about my projects. When I mentioned struggling with a particularly demanding client, he offered practical advice from his years in sales, treating my freelance work as a legitimate business for the first time. The most telling shift came when he helped me move to a slightly larger apartment 7 months after I had left home. He arrived with his truck and tools, spending the day assembling furniture and installing shelves without complaint. As we worked side by side, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that while he might not fully understand or approve of all my choices, he was learning to respect them as mine to make. Throughout this period of family reconciliation, my gaming remained a personal sanctuary. My new PC became the center of both my work and leisure, a symbol of my resilience and self-determination. I established a healthy balance, using gaming as a reward after productive work days, rather than an escape from family tension. I discovered that the distance created by living independently actually allowed me to enjoy family gatherings more fully. Without the constant proximity and friction of living together, I could appreciate my parents' positive qualities while maintaining the boundaries necessary for my own well-being. Our relationship was different now, less intense, but in many ways healthier, built on the emerging foundation of mutual respect rather than authority and obedience. The journey from that moment of discovery, finding my computer missing, to establishing myself as truly independent had been painful but necessary. The betrayal that had initially felt like the worst thing that could happen had ultimately pushed me toward growth. I might have delayed for years otherwise. Standing in my own apartment, looking at my new computer setup, surrounded by the life I had built for myself, I realized that sometimes the greatest gift can come disguised as loss. By taking my computer, my parents had inadvertently given me the push I needed to claim my full independence. The path hadn't been easy, but I had emerged stronger, more confident, and with a clearer understanding of my own worth and the boundaries necessary to protect it. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to stand up for yourself, even when it meant creating distance from people you love? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more experiences about establishing boundaries and finding your independence. Your support means everything to me, and I truly believe that by sharing our stories, we help each other grow. Thank you for listening to my journey.